in the early 1600s, when the Pilgrims crossed the cold and unpredictable Atlantic aboard the Mayflower, they brought with them almost nothing the world considered valuable. They carried no treasure, no silver coin, no gold bars, no wealth of any earthly kind. What they did carry was deeper faith, determination, courage, and the hope of a new beginning, guided by the providence of God. When these weary travelers finally stepped onto the shores of Plymouth in 1620, they entered a land rich in promise, but poor in precious metals. For all their dreams of freedom, they stepped into a world where gold and silver were almost non-existent. The early English colonies had no gold mines, no silver mines, and almost no coinage at all. Without silver or gold, the lifeblood of the global economy, daily life had to run on improvisation. People traded corn, tobacco, cloth, tools, and furs, because hard money simply didn't exist. To the Pilgrims, gold and silver were almost mythical, symbols of stability far out of reach. Yet despite this hardship, after surviving sickness, hunger, and heartbreaking loss, the Pilgrims gathered for what would become one of the most important moments in American history, the first Thanksgiving. And that feast was not a celebration of wealth, but a celebration to honor God. They thanked Him for survival, for provision, for mercy in a harsh new world. It was gratitude, rooted not in abundance, but in faith. At the same time, beneath this familiar Thanksgiving story lay a deeper truth. The colonies were starving for silver. Silver was not just a precious metal, it was the engine of global trade. In Europe, silver paid for tools, weapons, clothing, ship parts, and every manufactured good the colonists depended on. But England had no silver to send them, and the colonies had no mines to produce it. This shortage shaped the destiny of North America for more than a century. During the Pilgrim era, Spain controlled the world's silver supply. Spanish galleons carried enormous quantities of New World silver from mines in Bolivia, Mexico, and Peru, especially from the legendary mountain of Potosí. This flood of silver made Spain wealthy, powerful, and influential. It gave them pricing power, military reach, diplomatic leverage, and control over global trade. And the Pilgrims, living on the edge of the world, had none of it. Without access to silver, the colonies were economically weak and dangerously dependent on European merchants. So the Pilgrims turned to the one resource they did have: beaver furs. Europe was obsessed with beaver hats, and demand for pelts was enormous. The Pilgrims realized that beaver fur could be traded for the one thing they needed most: silver. Suddenly, the wilderness itself became their silver mine. They traded furs to English and Dutch merchants in exchange for silver coins, iron tools, powder and shot, ship parts, and clothing. These trades didn't just help them survive. In many ways, they kept the Plymouth Colony alive. For a time, the forests of New England produced more practical wealth than any mine. But the Pilgrims knew a hard truth. Spain's dominance over silver made them a global superpower. Spain could build great navies, fund large armies, and shape economies across continents because of their access to silver. This reality deeply concerned the English colonies, who feared that without precious metals, they would always remain poor and dependent. This fear, first felt during the Pilgrim era, eventually led later colonists to experiment with their own forms of money. Wampum, colonial bills, early paper currencies, all born from one simple problem. The colonies had no silver, no gold, and no mint. One of the most surprising parts of this story is that America's most common and trusted coin in the entire colonial era was not British at all. It was Spanish silver. The famous Spanish silver dollar, the piece of 8, became the backbone of early American trade. It circulated everywhere, from Boston to Charleston. It was so widespread and reliable that it ultimately became the model for the American dollar itself. The currency we use today is a direct descendant of the silver coins that flowed into the colonies, beginning in the Pilgrim era. So as we celebrate Thanksgiving, we remember the Pilgrims honored God with gratitude. They struggled without silver or gold. Beaver furs became their first true form of hard wealth. Spanish silver shaped global power, and the American economy was born in a world defined by precious metals. Silver is not just a commodity. It is part of the American story, a story of survival, faith, endurance, and independence. And today, just like in 1620, silver and gold still reflect the direction of global markets, the rise and fall of empires, and the confidence of nations. Silver Forecast will continue, bringing you weekly price predictions, breaking silver and gold news, and deeper insight into the forces shaping metals markets. Make sure to subscribe and have a happy Thanksgiving.